every time I log into LinkedIn or log on to X or just turn on the TV to watch the news, there's something about DEI. There's something about President Trump and DEI. What I find very interesting is that there are two very polarizing sides of this story. There is President Trump, the savior for ending DEI, and then there is President Trump, the Antichrist, for ending DEI. He's not entirely wrong about DEI being problematic. And that's what we're going to discuss right now. He's not. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, is a problem for numerous reasons. One, because it was a direct result of an overcorrection. Let's rewind just a few years, back to 2020. President Trump was president at the time that George Floyd was killed. He didn't buy into this whole DEI situation. He didn't. And we all know that. The country was exhausted between COVID, shutdowns, being locked in with your families, kids out of school, the whole nine. People were exhausted. They were overwhelmed. Add to that, a social, racial uprising was brewing. And Trump was like, Enter President Biden. DEI, full swing, other direction. Now, what should have happened should have been a pause. Why are we still having conversations about race? Why are we still seeing police officers kill unarmed Black men? There were so many reasons or so many ways that we could have addressed this problem, but we didn't. Particularly in the corporate world, there was a massive overcorrection. I talk about this in the book. It was led mostly by guilt and fear of being considered a racist for not doing anything. This is the part that Trump is taking serious issue with. And in true President Trump fashion, he's heavy-handed with it. He doesn't care if someone considers him a racist for calling out what he considers to be a problem. Again, he's not entirely wrong. Let's continue to push through as to why I don't think he's entirely wrong. That overcorrection in corporate America resulted in trainings. We're going to talk about unconscious bias. That seems harmless enough. Unconscious bias turned into microaggressions. Microaggressions turned into white supremacy culture. It turned into anti-racism training. It just kept on correcting, pushing further and further and further into one direction. Eventually, you're going to push too far, and that's exactly what happened. So these trainings that went from well-intentioned, how do we become better? How do we make sure that we're treating our people fairly? How do we make sure that we aren't contributing to racist culture and discrimination, etc.? All well-meaning. Until it stopped being well-meaning. What a lot of leaders did was completely ignore protocol. Donating to organizations that claimed to be in support of education, of cultural reform, etc. They didn't do any vetting. The Black Lives Matter movement was a perfect example of receiving checks and payments without anyone asking where those checks and payments were going. All they had to say was, we're training people on how to be less racist. Okay, here's a check for $10 million. Where did that 10 million go? Again, overcorrection. So when President Trump is saying no more with this DEI, he's looking at stuff like that. He's not just saying, DEI, we don't care about No. Again, heavy-handed, but he's not entirely wrong. Let's take another example. Diversity, equity, and inclusion those trainings, which have now gone from, again, well-meaning, well-intentioned, cultural awareness, we're going to be inclusive, to, you know what, John? You're a white supremacist. You were born white, which means you hate Tishelle because she's Black. Who's going to sign up for that? Again, continuing to push in one direction. Then there were the quotas. You had very qualified candidates that were being denied opportunities so that we could actually make up for the opportunities that Tishelle never had. So again, sorry, John. President Trump is not wrong. And I'm very comfortable pushing back on that. I've had all of the comebacks. Well, white people have been winning forever. It's about time. I wholeheartedly reject that. As a professional with a real resume and real experience, I don't need to win just because I'm Black. I don't need that opportunity given to me because I'm Black. Overcorrection. What would be more valuable is examining why that opportunity would have been denied to Tishelle because she's Black. Let's address that. Let's address that systemic problem. Let's pull that out at the root, get rid of it, and then move forward. Nope. Instead, we're going to just make sure that John gets denied. He's not entirely wrong. That's just one of them. Let's talk about the media, who, from where I'm sitting, could care less about the truth. It is honestly scary and also entertaining to read articles because I can tell 100% which side of the political fence you sit on, which is concerning that our media has gotten this bold as to not even try to be neutral. I recently read an article, I think it was USA Today, and some of the pictures from President Trump addressing Congress were honestly comical. It was all just disrespectful photos of candidates to President Trump in rejection of his position on DEI and various diversity issues. How does that solve a problem? Yes, he's heavy-handed. Yes, he's not entirely wrong, but he's not entirely right about DEI. That we don't solve that problem by continuing to paint this narrative of how awful where's the middle? Where's the middle? I can look at a video, I can watch a video, read an article, and tell exactly which side of the fence that they're on. That is also why DEI has become a problem. Because the stories are being bent to fit the narrative of whatever outlet is telling the story. So if it's coming from a far left, far progressive perspective, Tishelle's a victim. She's been oppressed. She's been denied opportunities, all the things. I've actually had this happen to me in interviews where I share my entire experience, my entire career. Yes, there have been some experiences of racism, but I've never said I'm oppressed. How the story was told and bent was that I've spent an entire career oppressed. That DEI is doing so much good for everyone, or Black people never benefited from DEI. Why are we even trying to change this? Let's cancel all the companies that are pulling back on their DEI. It's coming from the far left. Now, on the far right, racism isn't real. DEI is unnecessary. We don't necessarily need to address racism in the workplace. It's all about meritocracy. It's all about the qualifications of the candidate. Now, somewhere in the middle is where we need to be. Meritocracy does matter. I'm not hiring you just to tick a box. You still need to know how to do finance if I'm hiring you as an accountant. That's just not optional. Nor should it be. It doesn't make me a racist or the person hiring a racist for prioritizing those qualifications. So that narrative in and of itself is a problem. The media is essentially not helping in any way, shape, or form. Because the goal at this point should be, instead of shifting in another direction, how do we actually bring this to the middle? Because what happens if the next president is a Democrat? Do we shift back into the other direction again? This is not sustainable. Let's talk about the other reason why Trump is not entirely wrong. CEOs. You guys got it wrong with the overcorrection, and you're still getting this wrong. Now, there's two positions. Either doubling down. We care about our diversity. We're not okay. Or backing down entirely. How sustainable are either of those positions? It's one thing to say that you're doubling down, only to backtrack months later. It's not a good look. It definitely does some damage to your reputation, your credibility, and the likes. But what about those that made public commitments and are already backing down? Target. That's a bad one. Does damage to your reputation, your employee and customer retention, so your turnover is really high. It's not sustainable. So CEOs, you're still messing up. Here's the fix. President Trump is the president for the next 4 years. What happens, again, think about this. What happens if we have someone else who has a very different opinion on DEI? The truth is that diversity matters. We are becoming a more diverse country. People are risking their lives to come here because we are a diverse country. And it's 10xing, 20x, it's becoming more and more. Don't we want to prepare for that? It doesn't mean we ignore qualifications, that we ignore skill set, but what we are great at in this country is being prepared. The country's changing. It's absolutely changing. My niece is 8 years old. In the time it takes me to try to remember my password, I've said this many times, she can pull up her little tablet, log into her Netflix account, be watching her favorite show with her feet kicked up on the couch while I'm still in like 5 seconds, 6 seconds. And TT's still over here trying to figure out, what's that password? That is the same password. We're changing. These kids are smarter. They're more tech savvy. We need to be prepared. Diversity is not about eliminating the white population. It's not about eliminating men. That's a very false narrative. This is part of why DEI has been so wholeheartedly rejected by half of the country. Because who wouldn't reject something that wants to eliminate their existence? I would. You want me to sign up and support what? And it's getting rid of beautiful black women with dreadlocks? I'm not for that. This is common sense stuff. There's another way. Starts with common sense, but also starts with respect. We want to treat people with respect because we want to be treated with respect. In short, President Trump is not entirely wrong. How he's going about this could use a softer touch. His bedside banner could use some improvement. But I don't disagree that DEI needs to be reworked, reconsidered, re-something. If you're a leader I encourage you to pick up my book, Black is Not a Credential, The Corporate Scam of DEI. I expose, or we'll call it reveal, the various ways that you, well-intentioned, messed up. And a lot of those are what President Trump are referring to. Pick up the book. Because I hate to say it, but one of the areas you're going to need to address is who's in charge of DEI. And for most of you, it was your HR team who had no idea what they were doing or how to put this together. And so they put together a lot of woke tactics. That's what's being rejected. DEI is not the problem. It really isn't. The implementation, the logic behind it, those are the problems. But when done right, it's good. And if President Trump had seen a properly executed DEI plan or program, I really don't think he would be on the warpath for it. I don't. But he didn't, so he is. There, that's my 2 cents.